I hope you all are planning on sticking around because we have a special treat at the end of this particular session. You know the name, you know the music. I am so excited to have a conversation a little bit more with Big Freedia, the Queen Diva. Please welcome her to the stage.
Hello, hello.
Hello.
What's going on?
Welcome,
Thank
welcome.
you. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you for joining us.
No problem. Hey, everybody. How y'all doing?
So, I mean, I have to get this out of the way because I'm a huge fan. I'm sure everyone else is. You have been everywhere the past few years. What have the past few years of your life been like?
It's been a roller coaster, but it's been a good roller coaster. I've been blessed to be able to do something that I love, which is music, and you know, represent for the city of New Orleans and for the culture of bounce music. But it's been such a blessing to be able to travel the world and do what I love to do, and also get to see the world, have fun, meet new people, experience new things, see different sceneries. It's a blessing.
Yeah. So in case there is anyone in this room who does not know the Big Freedia origin story and where your sound came from, can you just give us brief background? How did you become Big Freedia? How did you kind of pioneer and innovate this particular sound that you've become so well known for?
Well, just a little quick rundown of my story. You know, I grew up here in New Orleans. I started in gospel music, singing in choirs, choir director, you know, traveling all around the world singing with choirs. So that was mostly of my childhood, you know. Mom kicking me out the door on Sunday morning to go to Sunday school and then staying for church after, staying at church basically all day, you know, making it home at nighttime sometimes. So I did that for so many years, and it was a passion of mine and something that I really loved and enjoyed to do. And then when I made around 21, things started to change, and I started to see some different scenes, and my friend Katie Red, who was the first transsexual to come out with bounce music here in New Orleans, I started to background for Katie, and my life started to change right then and there. People was like, oh, you have the sound. You know, I would always be in clubs and like just in my neighborhood making this call, and everybody knew me from this call just all over the city. And then when I started backgrounding for Katie, that journey started there. And in 2000, I started my solo project. And it became, you know, history after that. I just continued to grind and stay focused. Right after Katrina, I decided that I was going to make sure that this was my full-fledged career and that I wasn't going to look back. And Katrina was able to take me outside of New Orleans and get my music spread it all over. And people were like, you know, what type of music you're listening to? So all of the New Orleans people were putting people on the music all around the world. So I was traveling and making a lot of moves, and I just continued my grind and continued to want to represent what I love to do and represent my city.
Why was Katrina that kind of crystallizing moment of you thinking, this music is what I'm going to do, this is what I'm pursuing whole hog?
Well, I mean, all the things that we went through, you know, being stuck here for Katrina and, you know, sleeping on bridges and at the convention center, it changed my life. It took me to a place where I said, you know, you could have everything, and then in a split second, you can lose it all. So all this material stuff is not worth anything. You know, it's all about living your life and being able to still be here, and you can rebuild all of this stuff. So it changed me in so many ways. And, you know, a lot of times when we look at disasters around the world, we take them for granted, and we see tsunamis and whatever else happens, you know, in different places around the world. And for Katrina, that changed me completely, looking at everything that happens outside around the world. It just changed my outlook on a whole lot of stuff in life, and made me want to be a better person and to just really lock down and grind.
Yeah. So we're in New Orleans, we're talking about criminal justice. I wanted to ask you, what were your views on justice, policing, all of those things as you were growing up here? You know, I think when people kind of drop into a city, you know, you think beignets, nice things, all of this other stuff, but, you know, you've been here forever. What were your views?
Well, I mean, I grew up in the hood, so you know I done saw it all from people being shot to, you know, fights that turned out ugly to, you know, just bad situations all around us growing up as kids. But the thing that kept me out of trouble was my mom always was on us, you know, and these parents have to stay on these kids, where they at, what you're doing, who you buy. You know, all of these things are very important to know what's going on with your children. And back then, even if you did something, I couldn't get away with nothing. I mean, my mama would know before I even got home. So-and-so said she saw you wearing. I'm like, Lord, they talk too much, you know, but so, I mean, we need that type of community to come back together to create safe havens for the children. And what my mom and my family, they created that. Even being in the hood, in the neighborhood where I saw all of these things, she would make sure I'm going to church, I'm going to Sunday school, I'm going to choir rehearsal, I'm by my cousins, I'm by family and friends who are gonna look out for me. So she was my protector and my provider throughout my childhood. And you know, when stuff like that would happen, you would see the police take forever to come in the neighborhood. People lying on the ground about to lose their lives. And you're like, why are they taking so long to come in this neighborhood when we had a police station right on Martin Luther King? You know, so I saw all of this, and just as I got older and, you know, started to understand it more, it was just like, you know, a lot has to change. And it starts with the community. If we all come together from, you know, parents, police, churches, teachers, you know, everybody, it's all across the board that's going to help make a change here in New Orleans.
Yeah. Do you think things have gotten better?
I mean, I think things have gotten better in certain situations and in the city, but, you know, some things have worsened as well.
Yeah. I want to talk about 2015 a little. You were charged with some fraudulent activity related to housing vouchers. Mm-hmm. Can you talk us through what it was like to go through that so publicly? And you were very contrite about what happened. So I'm wondering if you can just talk us through kind of your mindset during that entire process.
Well, for me, first and foremost, I was qualified to be on the program because I lost everything through Katrina. So my whole time being on housing, I was able to be on it because I was going through everything just like everybody else. And then I wasn't making the money that I'm making now. And in the process of all of that, not having proper people doing my books, proper management, just not knowing, you know, just really, 2010 was my year to really just take off and start stepping outside of New Orleans and really, you know, going around the world. And in 2010, when I started to make a little bit more money, that was also the year that my mom was diagnosed with cancer. So at this point in my life, I'm only concerned about my mom. And anything really was happening with my business, I will, you know, go to a show, do a show, come back home, and back to taking care of mom. 2014, mom passed. 2015, the government came and said, oh, you wasn't eligible for such, and such. And
were you shocked by that?
Oh my God, I was torn apart because, you know, I'm thinking, you know, I still don't know really how much money I'm making because other people handling this stuff. This is something new for me. I just got an agent, just got a manager, you know, other people handling all these affairs for me, but you best believe to God, when I went through all of this stuff with the courts, you know, I owned up to my situation. I took, you know, what was my lick, and I dealt with it. It was a mistake that I made in my life, and I regret making the mistake, but if I had to do it all over again to make sure that my mom was taken care of, I would.
Yeah. Did that experience change your vision or thinking around the criminal justice system at all, or give you new insight into it?
Well, it gave me, you know, an insight to it for sure, because I mean, I've, you know, became a convicted felon and, you know, have to deal with all of that. And when I dealt with that situation, you know, I felt like I was treated fair, but I also was treated unfairly because when I got fined, I was fined $35,000 as restitution to pay the government back for the housing, which was no problem. You know, it's my mistake. I'm going to take my lick and pay my money. So when I paid the $35,000, the day I was in court, he gave me the sentence. I told my lawyer, I said, well, okay, you know, I know people in high places as well, so somebody, you know, a friend did me a huge favor and gave me $35,000, paid the $35,000. When I handed the check over in court, the judge said, oh, well, we're going to charge you another $35,000, so they hit me with $70,000. You know, so it was just like, you know, I'm not making this type of money to be able to give you $70,000.
Yeah.
You know, and then it was, you know, a mistake on my part, but to charge me $70,000 and then to make me a convicted felon where I'm restricted from so many different things that I want to do. You know, even being an artist and being the person that I am, you know, it's not safe all the time to be out at clubs or in the street late at night. I can't carry a firearm no more to protect myself. So it's just a lot of things that worked for me in that situation and worked against me.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to talk a little bit about, you talked about firearms, you talked about shooting as you grew up. Gun violence is obviously a big issue. It has touched your family as well. I'm wondering how you were thinking about that going forward.
Well, I was affected myself. I was shot twice by a guy who was trying to rob me, and so it hit me hard. It hit home really hard, and that changed my life, had me terrified to come outside. It also was the reason why I bought a gun, because I would have never originally had a gun. I'm like coming from choir practice, you know, and I'm a church boy, so having a gun was nowhere ever in my mind frame. But when I got shot, I was terrified to come outside. I would refuse. My mom was like, you're not about to be stuck in your own house in your own city. So she made me buy a gun. And, you know, that changed me. Like, just to even have to have a gun in my car or in my presence, it just changed my mindset. But it also made me aware of, like, all of my surroundings, be very mindful. You know, anything can happen within a split second. And I'm grateful for the people that I have in my life that, you know, my circle around me that helps me to get through my everyday things, because some things are just rough to handle, and people can't even imagine the background stuff that they don't see. You know, they see me as Freedia walking and doing shows and all this, but like just personal stuff and safety and all of that, all of those are issues for me still to this day. Yeah,
how are you managing that?
Prayer. By the grace of God, that I'm protected by his blood, because things happen so quickly.
Yeah. I want to let our audience know once again that we will come to you for questions, so get those hands up high. I just have a couple more questions for Freedia. So I'm wondering what is next for you. You've worked with Drake recently, you worked with Beyonce. What is on tap for the next year for Freedia?
You know, just putting great music out, continuing to represent for my city and continue to put New Orleans culture on the map. And, you know, I'm working towards getting on the charts and a Grammy and all kind of stuff. I'm working hard. Like, I'm working on this next album coming out in June, so y'all be ready. You know, just staying positive, staying, you know, around great people, good energy. And just to step back really quick with the gun violence, you know, and I also was affected because my brother was killed last year, 4 days before my birthday. And that changed my family as well, you know. So these things that we see and we go through in New Orleans, we also become numb to a lot of it. And it shouldn't be like that, where you become numb. You're so used to getting a T-shirt, or you're so used to going to a DJ or a repast. And that has to change. You know, this is not okay to have to put your brother or sister or a kid or whoever on a T-shirt for violence.
You know, the thing I think that we've been trying to get at all day is, what would a fair and just New Orleans for everyone look like? What would it look like? What would it feel like? What would it take to get there? So as someone who grew up here, what would that look like for you?
Same opportunity for everyone. Same opportunities, jobs, you know, credit, you know, buying houses, everything, same opportunities. We need the same opportunities as everyone else. We need to be able to, you know, go in and try to put on a nice shirt and tie and say, you know, I'm going to get a job. We need people to create opportunities for these kids. The community, once again, coming back together, you know. Like back in the day when I would come up the street, I'm doing something wrong, my mama knew. because so-and-so, Miss Emma across the street, she done called my mom at work and she know the whole skilo before I even get home. So just bringing that sense of looking out for each other back. We need that.
Yeah. All right, I want to go to the audience for questions.
They don't want to talk to me.
We have one right back there.
Hi, Freedia. I'm a big fan. I'll be at your show in Chicago, where I live. But I had a question. As an artist that's openly expressing and going to a lot of different states and trying to spread, a message of inclusivity, how do you feel like that's reflected in your own city? Do you feel like the LGBT population is included in decision-making? Do you feel like they're overrepresented and, harassed? How do you see your message of inclusivity in New Orleans?
Well, for me, I speak loud and proud, and I represent a lot of those people who don't have a voice to be able to speak for the LGBTQ community. And I think that more people just have to get involved. They want their voice to be heard, they have to get involved. You can't sit at home and expect things to happen if you're not out there doing anything. So I'm always out there working for the community, working for the people, and, just making people aware and just trying to keep people on the right path. Tomorrow I'm doing World AIDS Day in Florida, and just doing stuff to make people aware. And I work with so many different organizations and PrEP and different hospitals. So just making yourself available, it's the way to get it out there.
Yeah. Question right there.
Hi, Nandi Campbell. I'm a criminal defense attorney.
I know.
I'm your biggest fan. I wanted to know, and I wanted you to speak on, you talk about your brother, but I also want you to talk about your cousin and how it was for your family to have to support him going through the system. Because when I saw your name, I thought you were going to talk about your situation, also Cardell's.
Yes. So my cousin is Cardell Hayes, who, the situation with Will Smith. And when I got that phone call that night, it changed my life. And I'm like, my cousin is one of the sweetest people I know. He's a big guy, but he's a very soft teddy bear. And to get the phone call that, this situation hadn't happened, it bothered me from immediately when I got the phone call, because I knew something was wrong. He had to be really pushed. But just to be railroaded in that whole situation and, evidence against him, being tampered with and things being took off the scene. My family went through a lot. We put a lot of money out. We spent a lot of money, and we were very much railroaded and treated very unfairly in that situation. And, both sides lost. I was very saddened for Will Smith's family as well. I mean, nobody wants to see anybody lose their lives, but just the situation of how everything went down, it was not fair at all. He wasn't given a fair trial. They did a lot of stuff to cover up different things, and as you can see, stuff is still being uncovered and coming out. And we just keep having faith, and we pray, and we just hope that justice is served in the proper way. And even being that he did what he did, you still have to pay for your crime, but let's be fair about it. Yeah.
Do we have any more audience questions? Someone standing up back there.
Lanetta, New Orleans Black Social Workers. I would like to commend you on mentioning about not normalizing the murders in New Orleans. I think everybody in this room should make a point of not, whenever someone is murdered, both families are in a loss. And please keep doing that with your platform.
Most definitely.
All right. Everyone, please join me in thanking Freedia so much.
Thank you so much. That was fun.